What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, I'm back to discuss Natdex again because apparently this is the only metagame I can actually play. So I'm joined by Fister, and then Keanu's going to be playing BGC in the background, and we'll see if he has anything productive to add about a Pokemon he's never played with in any format. Um,
Or if
Today,
he'll just rant about VGC losses.
yeah, that too. So today we're talking about the Zygarde suspect
Uh,
test. Now, this went live a couple of days ago, and we procrastinated because that's what we do. Um, but basically, Zygarde's being suspected again. Um,
Surveys
so
are
yeah,
up.
we're here to talk about it. Um, this was following a survey whose results have yet to be posted, but may be posted very soon. Um,
Are posted right
oh,
now,
let's
literally right
go.
now.
Let's go. Right on cue. All right, now we have to keep this take of the video. So yeah, every blunder is going to be left in now because that was too perfect timing. But yeah, okay. So first we'll talk about the survey results, and then we'll get into like the actual like meat of the matter here. Um, so the first thing here, enjoyability rated pretty highly, 7.3. That's not that bad. Noted to be an increase from before. Uh, Out balanced 6.7. Fair enough. Marsh 5.3. Now this is like interesting. One of the
This
more
is
controversial
all over the
Pokemon.
place.
Yeah, you got
Wow.
people saying it's nothing, people saying it's a lot, and then people in the middle. So yeah, I mean we'll get to that. I talked about this last time. Pokemon very overwhelming offensive pressure, but clearly, a fair number of people don't think it's problematic at all. They say Marshadow is nearly always a controversial subject in any tier. It's no surprise with how powerful it is. Blah blah blah. The score has fluctuated. Um, Currently, it seems to suffer from the latest building trends not being as favorable to it as in the past. So this score may be reflective of that. That's fair. Um, we have gotten a full regular season of Derby now, and I think Marshadow was not quite as terrible as it could have been. We saw a lot of metagame shifts, such as like Stack Attacka really rose up a lot. Um, well, as well as other stuff. We saw I think a fair amount of Sun as well. All right, Zygarde. Now this is where things get interesting, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, blah 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 blah. So this got an average of 6.49. Now this, I will tell you now, is the highest that anything got on this survey, um, which is not really that surprising because these Pokemon's been kind of problematic for the entire time the tier has existed. Of course, it got suspect tested like a year ago, um, and did not get banned. I thought it should have been banned. I have always thought this Pokemon was fundamentally silly because it had Terra and Clear Amulet, and it's actually very difficult to like actually prevent this Mon from setting up, even if it doesn't like actually do that much damage at the beginning. I think the biggest change with Zygarde and Natdex is the best set is no longer inarguably choice banned, right? Um, the other DOU gens, Zygarde, pretty much always relies on the choice band. You'd also see like Dragon Dance once in a while, but choice band is far more common. However, given like the buffs of like Clear Amulet and Terra, the setup sets have gotten like much better, and so choice band, while still being a solid option, is no longer like indisputably like the number one set, and I think that's a very good illustrator of like what the issue is with this one. Like it has the bulk, it has the options to set up. It's very difficult to stop it, and that's why it's scoring highly here. So Zygarde's interesting, right? Because particularly as of late, we've seen a lot of like Zygarde plus Jirachi. Now, this is something that's existed for a long time. There's a sample team that I built like almost a year ago now. Had Zygarde plus Jirachi. Jirachi being banned in every other doubles format there has Follow Me, except for this one, right? Um, Very good partner for Zygarde. Very solid mon in general, right? Has a lot of flexibility. So that's very interesting here, right? These two Pokemon, very related to each other, scored so close. So this is just 0.03 behind Zygarde. They're basically the same, right? Um, However, the council kind of felt that since Zygarde has been like consistently controversial for so long, that it was better to like address Zygarde first and see if like what that takes us to, right? Whereas Jirachi, fundamentally maybe a little bit silly, but we'll see what happens with it, right? Um, Personally, I mean, we'll get into this later, but I'm not really. I think I'm more of a fan of this Mon than like a lot of people are. I would be disappointed to see it go, but I also understand where that argument comes from, right? All right, we get to the lesser stuff here. Shakataka, new metagame shift. We
Oh,
saw a lot of this. Um, this scored quite low. I mean, I think most people agree this is not like actually problematic. It was just like a pretty successful like metagame call, right? Um, so yeah, I'm glad to see this. I think this is accurate. See, the vast majority of people here saying like a one. A couple people saying higher up, but I think the average player base sees that this mod is not really an issue. There kind of just needs to be like more play around it, and I think we've started to see that the last couple of weeks in particular. All right, DOA. This was a mod that was like very controversial prior to the tour. However, has not seen much usage in Derby like at all. I think only like once or twice. And so this is interesting, right? It's like right in the middle, but it's actually pretty close to like Zygarde Jirachi. This mod is probably a little bit silly too, right? Probably should not have access to Expanding Force. Banned in SV. Probably heading to be banned in Natdex, but maybe not right this second, right? So interesting to note here. I think I would have predicted it to get a lesser score based on like the things we've actually seen in tour. But there's still like a fair amount of people that play on ladder, and I think there's more of a concern there. Um, but yeah, okay. Shadow tag 4.0. So this is like kind of high, but not really. Please do not ban this. 454. And then EVMZ. Now we got to talk about this one later.
oh
But
boy.
yeah, this thing should probably go too. But we haven't really seen too much of it. I'm not really surprised, given the visibility, that it's not really very high. And then a few other things. Open team sheets, open Terra, blah 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 blah. Action on clear envelope is not on the table. 7 people mentioning it. I'm going to avoid mentioning that. Um, heat map. What the hell? Okay, well,
That's cool.
that is useful, but we're not here to look at this right now. Okay, so what are your thoughts on the survey, sister? What are you thinking coming off of this? You just finished with a 5-2 record in Derby, playing this tier, solely this tier, only this tier. What do you think the metagame is at right now? What does the metagame need? What are your thoughts on this suspect?
I think the survey is very accurate and the suspect is what it needs to be. I had Zygarde lower when the survey first came out, but a couple of recent games have made me see that Zygarde just needs to go. Especially test games that I've been having. I've seen Zygarde pull some absolute heinous shenanigans next to Chin Powell lately, and I've seen it just absolutely dominate any current metagame trends. Like, Coil Zygarde has risen up as a response to Stack being a decent metagame call, and it absolutely dominates that matchup in every conceivable way. It's still running Choice Band as a breaker on random teams. It's running Dragon Dance next to Power or other fast stuffs. And every single time, it feels oppressive. It's the number one mod I feel in Builder in this format.
Yeah, I'm
And I'm
pretty
not
good.
even using it much.
Yeah, I'm pretty inclined to agree. I think this one, every team needs to think about how it's going to be handling, dealing with like um, Zygarde plus Jirachi in particular, but also the other things that Zygarde can pair with, right? Um, I know I kind of talked down on it a little bit earlier, but I think one of the things that like to me about this mod feels like very, very silly is, I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about the clear amulet, like setting up stuff. But I think the choice band set is still very good. I think I would rate it like about even with the others, right? And I think the set is far more splashable, right, on a lot of teams because you don't have to dedicate your team to it. And even when you just do this, when you just make it a choice band mon, I would still think this is like a tier 2 Pokemon. Ignoring all the setup stuff, ignoring everything else about it, Thousand Arrows with choice band is just that good. It also still has Terra it can abuse and it has POW that it can pair with, right? Um, and so that's where Zygarde was prior to this gen, and it can still very much do that. The issue is we now have. Uh, let me find a good example here.
Oh, buddy. Just go to your old sample team that's been working for over a year now.
pretty much. Let's see. I'm a better, more recent example. Where is it?
Shout out to Ursaluna that showed just how effective normal plus ground as stabs is, by the way. Definitely not relevant here or anything.
Okay, so I was thinking of a particular team, but I don't know where it went. Lol.
We
Um,
have story of a missing builder and broken builder at that.
what the hell? Oh, it just got cut off. The sixth mod is missing
Yeah,
from every team. Let's go.
we've been we've been
But
here
it's fine.
before.
The missing mod was not important to the idea. But basically, now we have stuff like this. Coil, right? This could very easily also be Dragon Dance. Um, and for me, I think the Coil set is really what makes this mod so like dangerous right now. For a long time, we always used Dragon Dance, and Dragon Dance was very good, and part of why the mod got suspected the first time. But Coil makes it so much more difficult to remove, and you can pair it with like multiple forms of speed control because you can pair it with like both like Trick Room and with like Tailwind, right? As you can see here, I'm using it with like Tailwind Zapdos, right? The last one on this team, by the way, was like a Mega Venusaur. Um, so yeah, stuff like this, right? Clear Amulet, very fundamental to Zygarde being so strong as it is. However, like I said, without it, still a good mon. But this set is like the defining reason why people are using Zygarde so much. Um, Usage stats haven't been
Completely
updated in a while,
unresisted.
but yeah, there's like no way to resist this move. Except for like grass and bug. And so your answer, your resists to this move is basically just Rillaboom. And I mean, obviously Rillaboom's like a good mon, but the thing is,
Rillaboom's
Rillaboom,
like beating Coil.
yeah, Rillaboom is absolutely not beating Coil. Um, Mod that has such high defense. Wait, why are the EVs run? Okay, the entire builder is apparently screwed up. I think the EVs for each
Let's
mod got turned onto like a
let's
different one.
let's not worry about that. We'll do some smoke on debugging later, I guess. But like Rillaboom can kind of whack Zygarde. It can never one hit KO it, even if it like crits. But the thing is, Zygarde has extreme speed. It doesn't care. It could just KO you if you're not like clicking fake out. And you compare it with so many other mons that invalidate Rillaboom, such as Jirachi that eats the grass hits, or Chimpao that just kills Rillaboom, or Incineroar who switches it and mitigates Rillaboom. Like, Rillaboom is only really switching in defensively and not able to force it out in any meaningful way. And the mons that
Yeah,
can force Zygarde out in meaningful ways are usually not taking hits very well from it.
and extreme speed's another important thing to keep in mind, right? Because it's a very critical part of like the choice band set. Obviously, this generation we've seen like a lot of different mods using like E-Speed and stuff like POW. And that's really pretty much what like Choice Band Zygarde can do next to POW. I mean, obviously it clicks Thousand Arrows most of the time, but Extreme Speed is helpful for it too. But particularly for Coil, right? I think like you're moving first anyway, right? And so a lot of the time Coil just feels better than like Dragon Dance because you have the option to move first if you really need to. Um with Extreme Speed. Not to say that DD is bad, but I think Coil is like very much more applicable than it originally was like thought to be. And I'd say Coil itself is like one of the major drivers in why we're having this suspect, right? Okay, let's see. Let's go back here. What am I missing? Okay, yeah, Jirachi. Let's talk about Jirachi. What are your thoughts on Jirachi?
Okay, so the way that I look at Natdex metagames is I can use any setup mon that I want and pair it with a redirector that has just about any quality that I need for that setup Pokemon. I don't view Jirachi as inherently unbalanced in a tier that has Ogerpon, Blastoise, multiple Eviolite follow me users such as Electabuzz, Clefairy, Magmar. Those aren't even like meta, but you can still use them for their typing, and you have Rage Powder users like Amoonguss or Volcarona or Sinistcha. There's so many redirectors in this format that all do unique and powerful things that I don't view Jirachi as unique in that regard in almost any way. Like, if you want Follow Me and Trick Room and Life Do, oh look, Sinistcha does the same thing. It just has a different typing with different properties. Like it's very, very good at walling Zygarde. Oh, look, if I want a fire type that has redirection and sets Hillin, I have Volcarona. And bonus points, it resists Marshadow. There's so many different ways to use Follow Me in this format that I find it weird that Jirachi gets called out when it just happens to be a really good partner for Zygarde with its typing because it resists ice, it resists grass, and it resists dragon. That the three biggest types that Zygarde doesn't really like eating too much because it's like it doesn't want to eat a Woodhammer for Millaboom. It can, but it just doesn't really want to. So Jirachi patches up those matchups really well. But in a format where I can find a redirector that pairs its typing almost perfectly with any other setup sweeper, like I use Tyranitar plus Volcarona. Volcarona eats grass hits, eats fighting hits, is neutral to ground, and eats fairy hits. These are all great qualities to pair it with Mega Tyranitar, and that team did amazing for me when I ran it, and I still run Volcarona with other teams. I ran Sinistcha this week, and it didn't. The game didn't go over well, but in testing, it was a great mon to have next to King Gambit because it's immune to fighting, and it was able to set Trick Room for it if I needed to. It's just like it's strange to me that Jirachi gets singled out as the broken one with this many other redirectors in the format that all do different things. We have three different ogre pawns that are viable in this format in grass pond, fire pond, and water pond that all do different unique things for certain teams that need them. And they just like I wouldn't call them weaker than Jirachi. They have the same base stat total almost, and they're definitely more optimized in their base stat total. And they have other incredible moves like their broken signature move and Encore and Spiky Shield that's like I just don't see it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think Jirachi's a lot less unique than it used to be. Obviously, it's very strong, but I think the biggest issue is definitely it paired with Zygarde, and I think in that case, given like the ways Zygarde has been spammed for so long, I definitely think Zygarde is probably the thing to target. So I am absolutely in support of banning this mon, and I think afterwards we have to see where Jirachi lies, right? Because when you were talking about that, what made me think of this is like Jirachi's typing does not pair quite as well with a lot of the other like um setup sweepers as it does with Zygarde. Obviously, can use stuff like Kyurem Black, but I don't think Kyurem Black should even be legal either. That's an aside, but that mon has too much BSD to be legal. I'm a hater, but we haven't really seen much of it, primarily because there's stuff like Zygarde that's easier to use. So we'll have to see, right? If Jirachi goes on to enable even more things, then I'd be definitely like more willing to like give it a look. But I think historically the thing it's been paired with the most is like stuff like this, right? Pairing it with like Dragon Dance Jirachi. This is the sample team I was talking about earlier. Um, and Jirachi is very excellent at doing this job. But I think you're right. Like there are other redirectors that are very good, and I don't think Jirachi really. Um, I don't think Jirachi is the only way you could use Zygarde even in this way, right? I've used Blastoise plus Zygarde to success before. Now let's talk about Blastoise, right? Because I think this is like an interesting mon that people are kind of forgetting. In a lot of ways, is very similar to like Jirachi. If there's one argument to like make for Jirachi, it's like the other moves besides Follow Me, because there are other mons that click Follow Me, but the thing that Jirachi does do is it has like great move pool options like Encore, Trick Room, Life Do. But there are other mons that do
Stealth
all of those things
Rocks.
as well. Rocks, although I've never been like biggest fan of that set in particular. But on
Yeah.
paper, when you look at something like Blastoise, which actually compresses an even better combination of moves,
And
right?
doesn't like it's no slouch on the defensive stats. It's very, very
It's
much
literally
keeping toe with Jirachi.
yeah, it's very close. It's a little bit less bulky because it has less HP, but you're trading that for the fact that you have fake out, right? And so you can use something like this as well. Um, and there's also stuff like Volcarona. stuff like the Ogre Pawns, particularly this one and this one, I think, are actually the better ones in this format. You can also use Hearthflame, but I think Hearthflame wants to be more offensive in this format. But this one gets
That's
to hold an
bold.
item, and this one has sturdy. Some of these are
And
fundamentally solid as well, I think. And there's also stuff like
Amoonguss
what
Amoonguss
was I
still
thinking of?
exists. It's
You
still
also have
got the great
this,
move pools it's always had.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So
just gotta deal with terrain, but, like, it's still Amoonguss.
yeah, Among Us is around as well. So I think Jirachi is not something that I think either of us really think is the actual issue at hand. I think on Jirachi, I'd like to see Zygarde go, and then I'd like to re-examine where Jirachi's at in the metagame. Because it does have like a lot of stats for a redirection mod, and that does feel like fundamentally a little bit silly. But the thing is, Ogrepawn's not that far off, and Ogrepawn has a lot more offensive flexibility than Jirachi does. Granted, it can't
None of
really
these
do
mons
both
are
of those
really
things at
that
the
far
same
off.
time. But I think
Like, look
after playing a lot of SV and a lot of Natdex, I think Jirachi does not feel like as crazy to me as like some people make it out to be. All right. On that note,
yeah.
let's see. I'm going to go through a couple of the responses to this thread. Um, well, this one is kind of just a joke. I don't even really feel the need to cover this one. All right. Here's Jello's post. I mean, he was actually supposed to join us on this video, but we had trouble like finding an overall overlapping time. Okay. And
And then he
so
got owned.
he's basically taking the opposite position, which I think is still worthwhile to acknowledge here, right? That Jirachi is like fundamental part to Zygarde being strong. Um, he talks about he does think Zygarde is like still good without Jirachi, but he thinks it's only like in the bandworthy conversation because of Jirachi. I couldn't really disagree more. I think the Mon would pair it with stuff like Blastoise or stuff like Volcarona anyway, because it's never had Clear Amulet and Terra before, and those are just two strong buffs for a Mon that like was already always decent. And it also makes it hard to like play around Choice Band versus
You could
like the setup set.
you could
Not
probably pair it with Clefairy, to be honest.
yeah, but I just want to take like a quick look at this game because I think it illustrates something interesting about Zygarde in this format, right? That is not as big of a deal, I think, in the other formats where it's good. So this game, we can see Zygarde on both sides. It's not really relevant here. We're gonna get this in a second. So, okay, game starts. My opponent has a pretty big advantage. I do get Tailwind up, but now here it gets interesting, right? Because I have several options here. If I'm the setup set, it's actually very difficult for my opponent to like deal with it, right? If I Terra out of my like fairy weakness and we click like Coil or something, it gets a lot more difficult for my opponent to break this Mon because they're kind of out of position here. So my opponent is a bit caught off guard here when I double up with my choice band high horsepower. And so now they click taunt to stop my like Zygarde from sweeping, trying to play around the setup set. But in the process, they now have lost a Mon and a lot of momentum. And now I'm able to like go on and end up winning this game. So that's one of the things about Zygarde in this format that I think is like powerful and would still exist without Jirachi in the tier, right? That duality of having to play around both the banded set, which outputs immense damage, cannot be there's nothing that's immune to it, right? Or the setup set, right? Like playing around that here, which could have been very devastating, and I could see how you could think it might be like a setup set when you look at this team. Um, the difference is the
Looks
Gardevoir was
perfect for
actually
Coil.
combined here instead of the Zygarde. I digress. So being able to like play around both of those is very difficult, and I think in the other gens where Zygarde's around, it's not as difficult because the choice band set is a lot more common. Um, and you have Intimidate to shut it down, to shut down like the setup set, really. But here that doesn't exist, so you have to play very carefully around like setup Zygarde to the point that I think it's just uncompetitive. Um, and I think that uncompetitiveness exists with or without Jirachi because we've seen Zygarde teams without Jirachi for a very long time, going back to NDPL, which was around the time it was first suspected. But I think the discovery of Coil even more so pushes this mon over the edge, right? For a long time, it was actually like we actually banned coaching in Natdex, which is a very interesting thing, right? Because that's legal in every other doubles format except for this one. And at the end of the day, the issue is not really actually coaching. The issue was Zygarde plus Kyurem
But
plus good
plus,
Pokemon clicking coaching plus Clear Amulet. And Clear Amulet plus coaching was the biggest part of this. But coaching actually
plus
did end up
Terra and
getting banned.
redirectors on top of that.
Yeah, that as well. Like something like Blastoise, just like Jirachi is no longer available with Follow Me, Blastoise no longer has Follow Me. And that's a pretty big deal because this compression of Follow Me and Fake Out is just completely unique. That doesn't exist with anything with more BST than
This mon,
Playroll. Yeah,
this mon in SV would be so broken.
yeah, it would be. Um, but where was I going with that? I got distracted. Um,
Talking about coaching.
oh yeah, coaching. So coaching ended up actually getting banned because of like the association with Zygarde in particular. There was also side on stuff next to Urshifu. And Zamazenta was one of the best users of it and it got banned. But despite all that, despite coaching going, Zygarde has still proven to be like very difficult to stop setup set. And now we're just using Coil to boost our defense anyway. And so I think that like kind of long term dominance of Zygarde and the way that it's been like somewhat viewed as problematic by large portions of the community for so long is really what makes it like so ban worthy to me. And I will be voting ban. Um, but yeah,
I would be
where we go
voting
back to
banned
this post.
if I managed to tolerate Natdex ladder long enough to get my Rex.
Real. Um, let's see. Let's go on here. Jello is talking about how he thinks Zygarde Rachi's pressure in the builder is over exaggerated. The score is very strong, but I believe players treat it as if it is harder to beat and build around than it actually is. Strong players with a good understanding of the metagame have been able to consistently use teams outside of this core and succeed with very good records, etc., etc., etc. I encourage these players to also post their thoughts, wrong there, thoughts for more perspective, but I bring them up to point out that the score is not without faults and the best players have actively been rewarded for building around it. Um, well, what
And
is your
look,
response to this? Is one of the people tagged in this post?
well, because he tagged both of us bozos, I think we've gone at length into detail about how we think Jirachi isn't really the problem. But oh boy, the thing about me building teams that haven't used Zygarde is that I've had to over prep for Zygarde on all of my teams, just in some way or another. Like the Sand team that I built week one, I I basically included Marshadow on that team exclusively for the Zygarde matchup. Like, I have Rillaboom on this team. I have Vish to threaten it. Tyranitar doesn't really care because it can eat thousand arrows and knock it, and do good damage. And Volk can help with tailwind control. And if Metagross gets going, it's just like, it doesn't. It's Iron Press. It's not going to take that much from a physical attacker. And despite all that, I still dedicated my sixth slot to beating Zygarde for this team to feel good.
Not only that, but Marshadow is something that is very unique in the fact that it also hits Jirachi as well, which is actually something that I think keeps like Jirachi in my eyes from being a little bit less silly. Is because when you're running Jirachi, when you're running your redirector, you don't want your redirector to be weak to the move that would be stealing your boosts anyway. And so that's actually something that I think weakens Jirachi in this metagame. Because Spectral Thief, great move, steals the stat boost, great counter to setup sweepers. That's one of the things you need redirection for next to your setup sweepers, right? But Jirachi is actually weak to that. And so in some ways, there's a lot of teams, if my team's weak to Marshadow, that I'm not going to put Jirachi on. Anyways, I need to stop harping on Jirachi. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you. You can definitely play around like Zygarde plus Jirachi or whatever, but like you need to be overly prepared, and even over preparing does not guarantee that you'll be able to like deal with it. I think because it's just
I
very strong in game. I think the actual like pressure in the builder is not what I would really be focusing on, although it's definitely there. But I think in game, it's like actually finding a way to like prevent your opponent from just taking over the game. That's the real issue for me.
yeah. I've gotten away with running some absolutely insane teams in Derby just because they were centered around beating Zygarde like structures. I ran Z Transform Mew to steal a setup sweeper's stuff if it ever like I ran that in week 2 and it won because that's how setup focused the metagame was at that moment. Whereas Zygarde was just the biggest thing to account for, and I saw a scout with a lot of Zygarde and Kyurem in it, so I just ran this weird, goofy little thing, and it was perfect for that game. Like I feel like I was able to get a lot of wins in this derby going 5-2 exclusively off the fact that I over prepped for Zygarde on a lot of my teams
Yeah,
without
that makes
actually
sense.
running them on myself.
Yeah. In my case, I think um, I actually made it a goal to like not use Zygarde this derby. I accidentally broke that because I forgot about it and then ran Zygarde last week, but we don't talk about that. But I think the other
I ran
thing
it
is
week
like, yes,
6.
you can build without Zygarde. There are other strong ground options, and I think part of what makes Zygarde so good is the fact that like ground is a very good offensive typing in this metagame. It's a lot of things, right? Um, but the thing is, those other ground types are not nearly as strong or as splashable as Zygarde is. So I don't think the fact that we've seen people have success like without using Zygarde is really much of an indicator. I think using Zygarde makes a lot of things easier. There was like 1 week where like I was playing laptops. I knew laptops was going to bring Stack Attacka, right? Um, but I was not going to be using like Zygarde at all because I was telling myself I wasn't going to do that. Um, and that actually made it a lot harder, right? So I think Zygarde is like, I don't know. I think it's very easy to build around. That's the point that like Jello finally reaches at the end. He does think that this mon is probably should be banned. He says Zygarde is too easy. Well, I don't feel the combo itself is too strong to the point of brokenness. For its strength, it is way too easy to build and pilot. The typing of these two mons, both being so good and did so much stuff, and easily synergistic with other very strong mons that usually teams this core end up just being okay. I lost track of that sentence somewhere. Um, but yeah, this is another way to look at it. So you can see that there's different kinds of opinions here, right? So Jello, even though he disagrees with some of the other like premises here about like Zygarde plus Jirachi, and even thinks Jirachi is like the more broken mon, he still thinks Zygarde should probably be banned because of this point. And I think this is a good point. Um, it's a very easy mon to use. You could definitely look at it this way. Um, I think this kind of just gets at the point. It's a little bit uncompetitive. This mon is kind of plays itself in a way. I kind of felt like that when I used it a lot during NDPL. Um, so
I
yeah,
can almost always guarantee that the attack that I click will get value into at least one slot. And if it's extreme speed, good luck finding counterplay if you die to that move.
yeah, yeah,
It literally just has the two best attacks in the game.
it's kind of true. Extreme Speed's a very good move as well, but Thousand Arrows absolutely like so strong, right? Um, yeah. Any other thoughts here on the survey or whatever? Let me pull up the survey again.
Oh, we didn't even go down to everyone's favorite mon. I think the stack stuff was very accurate in the responses that we saw. It just felt like metagame adaptation. Nice scrolling you got there. Uh, Deoxys scored 5.9 on this survey, which I found a little interesting considering I haven't seen it at all, and I just find it interesting in this metagame. Obviously, I was a crazy person who didn't really care if it went in SV, and in this game, I care about Deoxys attack even less. There's just so many abundant ways to deal with it in this format. We still have the ruins that are great. We have King Gambit is even better in this format in some ways than SV. We have Tapu Fini, an absolute godsend for terrain over here. And we have plenty of different forms of talent control and trick room with steel types like Stack that like Stack won't need a superpower, but it can like Trick Room is so good in this format that HO has to be careful. That I just don't really feel like the Oxys attack is like a huge deal for banning. So I was a little surprised that it got as high as it did on the
Yeah, I
survey.
generally agree. I think the stack developments are kind of bad for it just because Trick Room has been used a lot more. As we can see here, Nito earlier brought a size spam team that actually doesn't have DOA at all. So we've seen more like size spam with like Mega Gardevoir than we have with DOA, which I think definitely like weakens the case there. And Gardevoir has like a much more flexible speed tier, meaning you can pair it on like a lot of like semi-room kind of teams. Um,
I
so that's something to keep
played
in
so
mind as
bad
well.
this game. I played so bad this game.
It'd be like that. Um, let's see, back to the survey. Marshadow, wait and see on this one. I still definitely think it should go. But Zygarde's what is in front of us right now, and I think um, we have to make the good decision here to have a tier that is very interesting to play. So I think absolutely I am going to be voting ban on Zygarde. I think Shister feels as well, the same way. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, right? Um, let's talk about EVMZ real
EVM.
quickly before I wrap up this video.
Kill it.
This,
Kill it.
this.
Kill it with fire. People are not
Hold on,
exploiting this. It. Oh my goodness.
hold on. Oh, that's the wrong team. Yep. All right. So we're just gonna watch a couple of EV replays, because
You got a bunch
I've
of
been
these
actually
saved
using
up,
my
don't you?
own version of the EV team a lot the last week in test games, which I know has pissed many people off. Um, but I found that like pairing it with Serena is like really annoying because, uh, well, you can't fake it out. I don't understand why you clicked Electroshock there, but as soon as you did that, you lost the game.
I, I was tilted on the side of seeing this team.
Okay, fair enough.
That's all.
I'm gonna find
That
a
is
better
my
replay.
defense.
Mm,
My actual reason was I was expecting Blastoise to come in. I think I don't. Ugh. This is as the guy who built the Espathra Pass team in SV that nearly got Arcaludon banned via suspect because everyone was so tired of seeing that goob games and Arcaludon got used with stupid. There, there's multiple ways to build this. Like there's obviously the world famous Flamigo version of this team, but Era's been using this in test games against me, and honestly, it's just what can you do if you don't have like Haze or Spectral or something that just invalidates stat boosts like manually?
I think the only time I
Because
lost into this was playing against Penter, and he loaded quadruple phasing. He had like 4 Pokemon with Roar, Whirlwind, and Dragon Tail. That was the only time I lost with this because I just could not position it. Um, so I think, yeah, it's a very silly thing. You can see here the Latias just takes over this game. I have more.
I
Oh,
I think a very underrated aspect of Natdex Doubles is that while we have all the threats of every generation, we also have every support Pokemon that's ever existed, and EVM very much exploits that fact in more ways than I think anyone's ever really explored.
I think this is the most degenerate replay of all of them. It's like this really offensive HO team that does so much damage to like the Vaughn on turn one. I have to pass an accuracy drop, and the Latias still finds a way to win this game. Yeah, I yeah, this Pokemon is very silly. We'll see what
I stored
happens.
power
We
resist.
haven't really seen a lot of it, so it's not going to like affect things too much. But I absolutely am in the camp of banning this thing. Um, quick little game
I
here.
I legitimately think that the only reason that this thing hasn't been seen all over Derby is because people are just morally juxtaposed to running it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm not going to bring this to a tour game. It's too cringe. Oh my god. Yep. Get the thing in. Latias just wins. All right, next. Oh, this one's really funny. Watch what I pass to in this
This one,
game.
this one's great.
Oh, the Incineroar. No way.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry. I
He
think
even has his
I don't
own
think
baton pass
R2CDC's
team.
double baton pass could be H. But yeah, again, this please. This is very silly. Oh my god. And I mean, if there's any argument to like actually ban Jirachi, I think this stuff actually is like even more convincing because the redirection is so
Shout
critical
out to
here.
shout out to Z Happy Hour Dirachi.
Oh my god, yeah, this is heinous. All right, let's look at one final replay here. All right, EV gets set up,
As,
huge. Game over. Yeah, thanks for watching.
as long
Ban EVMZ, ban Zygarde, and have a good day. See you next time.